and sisters, welcome to another Salem Speaks broadcast. So good to have you join us once again for another exciting broadcast. We trust that you will be blessed, yes, by what we will be talking about this evening. We're going to be talking, brothers and sisters, about election and voting. Yes, election and voting. On this Christian perspective is something that I believe our two guests would be able to help us with this evening. One from an older person's, notice I said older person's perspective, and then mature person's perspective, and then the other from a more younger perspective. And so with that in mind, just want to welcome to Salem Speaks this evening. I believe it's for the first time, Minister Henry Sears. Minister Sears, good to have you.
Thank you.
And
Good to be here.
yes, and then also to my right, I have Miss Lakera McSweeney. Welcome, Lakera.
Thank you.
So good to have both of you join us. Well, first of all, before we get into our discussion for this evening, Mr. Henry, I just want to talk about your years that you have worked on your particular job, and you have been retired now for how long?
13 years.
13 years. Could you please tell us a little bit about the transition from your job where you work and now into more where you are working in the ministry and how you're being effective in doing that? Talk to us a little bit about that. Because some people believe, Brother Henry, when you retire, you just go home and put your feet up. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. On my job before retirement, I was a shareholder and in management in the companies. And then I retired. And immediately before I retired, I had a plan. I had a plan to mentor the boys at the Simpson Penn School. And I was successful in my application to the superintendent to do this mentoring. And that went on for about 7 years.
Okay.
Funded it myself. And I was involved in the mentoring program twice per week, Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons.
Yeah.
And it went on. And the core structure of the program, which was organized by myself, had to do with rap sessions with the boys, teaching them about the 10 Commandments with life applications, mentoring them and teaching them about the value of education,
Yeah.
and also mentoring them on the importance of family life.
Yes.
And so each of those modules would run about 3 months. And then we rotate.
Yeah.
We go back.
Right. I understand you were successful in that. What do you do now here at Salem in terms of ministry? Would you tell the public how you, some of the things you do around Salem?
Okay, as a minister and also pastoral team member,
Yes.
I was responsible for writing some training manuals, discipleship, counseling, membership,
Yep.
etc.
Yes. And the deacons training, yes, as well.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you wondered why I did that, ladies and gentlemen, brothers, I wanted to just let you know that after you retire, what you would have spent 13 years after retirement, but it says it's still working.
Yeah, I also try to do at least one Bible study of a particular passage or passages per week.
Okay.
And then, of course, with my daily devotions, and
Yes.
I read a lot,
Yes. Yes.
and I do a lot of research online as well as from books.
You keep your mind active.
Very active.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I don't have an idle mind.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's not the workshop for the devil.
Certainly. Now, Lakera, you basically just got started in work, so I'd just like for you to just let us know where you work, and we'll move on from there. What do you do?
So I am an attorney at law, and currently I'm employed at Clinton Sweeten O'Brien. It's a local commercial law firm in the Bahamas.
Okay, thank you very much. And Brian will talk about what you will work with me for that spot that I gave you this afternoon, Brian. O'Brien Sweeting and what?
Clinton Sweeten O'Brien.
Clinton Sweeting O'Brien. Well, this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we have come together because sometime within the next 12 months, we will have an election, Lord willing, in our country. And what we wanted to do, because elections, ladies and gentlemen, stir up certain things within our community, including the Christian community. It seems as if, brothers and sisters, that this is the time in our country where people get really tribal. They get partisan, and no one can really say anything to anyone, even within our Christian community. But today, I want you to put that aside a little bit, and we want to speak objectively today now on Christians or Christianity and voting. What is the responsibility of the Christian community in being involved in choosing those who would lead them in the civic areas of life and government? What is the role of the Christian in that? Now, we have a whole lot to discuss this evening, because we got to get into about the party politics and all of that, and who we should vote for, whether it be individuals or the party. But the first thing that I want to do, Minister Henry, is to put that question before you first.
Okay.
Tell us this evening, what is the role of a Christian in participating in the voting process, in the choosing of our government? Spiritually or scripturally for a Christian, I should say. What?
Okay, let me see if I could be brief.
Yes.
But I'll try. Governments were ordained by God. Genesis 9 verse 6. After the flood, God established government, civil government. And that was for good governance, that was for public order, for the punishment of wicked people and their deeds, for the praise and benefit of those who do good, and so to prevent anarchy and insurrections. Okay. Now, Paul comes along in Romans chapter 13, and he elaborates on that. And it was ordained by God, and he says that we have an obligation to be subject to governments. 1 Peter chapter 2, Peter tells us that we are to submit to the authorities, because those authorities were ordained by God.
Okay.
1 Timothy chapter 2, Paul says that we are to pray for all men, and including government as well. We are to pray for them. But Jesus gives the tip right there, that in the Sermon on the Mount. We are to be salt of the earth and light in the world. Now, the salt is no good in the shaker. The salt has to be poured onto the meat or whatever you are seasoning, and it creates flavor and whatnot. So our role as Christians, we have to mix and mingle in the world. And incidentally, when God established government, he also ordained that the church is the prophetic voice of God to government and the nations. Okay? So if we are going to be Christians, we have to mix and mingle. We cannot segregate ourselves unto ourselves. We have to mix and mingle and participate. Because in our system of democracy, participatory democracy, the government has provided for us the possibility of every adult person who qualifies to be able to vote. And if you want to see changes, then you will have to be the prophetic voice of God to the candidates,
Right.
and also to the government of the day.
Right. Okay.
And you participate in that.
Right. We can
You can't pass the buck.
Good. We can dig a little deeper into that. So your answer is that people ought to, according to the scriptures,
Yes.
be involved in voting, in choosing a representative government. Christians ought not to stay away from that.
Right.
Okay.
And also, if you go back to Jeremiah 29:7,
Yeah.
you had to wait for the welfare of the city.
Yeah.
Now, and that's like our society today. We are no longer a theocracy. There's no longer a theocracy. Because under theocracy in the Old Testament, God was preparing the nation of Israel to be the model, an example to other nations, and also in preparation for the establishment of the church.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay, good. So I want to get back to that with Jeremiah, but I want Lakera to jump in here. Here's what I want to ask you, Lakera, because the Sears talked about that. How do younger people see becoming involved in this exercise of voting? And do they see voting as something necessary? Because in their mind, in a lot of their minds, this is something for the older people to do, and we don't see what we getting out of it, or our interests or our ideas don't seem to make the various platforms. What do younger people see in voting? Do they see it as something necessary? Are they looking to participate in it? Or are they just saying, well, whatever will be, will be?
So I think the young people are can be separated into different categories. So I would say you have the loyalists who would be politically connected. You know, their parents and their family members have been supporting a particular party their entire lives. So those young people will always vote in an election, and they will always vote the same thing. Then you would have the persons who is voted in a previous election, and they say, well, their vote doesn't count because they haven't seen any changes. They have voted for a particular party, and they look around and they say, nothing has changed thus far. And so why should we vote in this upcoming election? What will it change?
Right.
You know, and then you have persons who say, you know, well, these political parties have started putting young persons in the forefront. You're now seeing younger and younger persons running to become MPs and putting their bids forward. But when you really dig deeper, everyone asks themselves, you know, do they actually have a say in what's going on in the party? Is it just a young face sitting there to say, oh, we're supporting young persons, but are their ideas actually heard?
So the based on what you would be hearing among your peers, are they voting? Are they going to vote, or what would you say young people, are they gonna, in what you're hearing, are they going to be staying away, or are they really interested in casting a vote with that, in that context that you gave? I know you gave 3, right?
Right.
But and really in all of this and all that's going on in our country today, so on and so forth, what would you say the majority consensus is? Are they interested in voting, or you think they're not?
Well, truthfully, I do not think young persons are interested in voting in this next election.
Okay. And why you said why would they not be interested? Just because of they don't see.
Well, because they feel as though they've done it before. So the ones who have voted in previous elections, they feel as though they've voted before. And so what's the point? Or they don't see a particular party that they can identify with. They don't see anyone who looks like them, who talks like them, who speaks like them. And so even with all of these parties now coming forward, you know, I think
There's
this
some
is the most
23.
this is the most parties that I've ever seen in my entire lifetime coming forward. Even with that, a lot of persons are like, you know, we don't see anyone worth voting for.
Right.
And so I know a number of persons who don't intend to even register.
Okay. Now, Ms. Henry, I wanted that viewpoint to be brought in now because in light of that, what is being said with the younger generation, who I believe now in our country is majority, right? So what do we say to Christian young people, Brother Henry, as to why they ought not have that view, even though that's what they're thinking now? What do we say to them would be their obligation? Do they have a moral obligation and a spiritual obligation to go against their thoughts, their thought process, that ideology that they have, and yet say in the midst of all of that, this is a duty of mine? Talk to that person.
Some of the young people need to understand that every vote counts. You only need to win by 1. Remember, a prominent member lost his seat by 4 votes in the last election. Now, a lot of those people who remained at home, if you had 5 of them cast their vote for that party, the incumbent would have retained the seat. All right, so every vote counts.
Now, what she's saying now, before you go further now, what I wanna really focus in on is they ain't interested, Henry, in who in that person win, because they say my ideas, who I look like, and my goals and my future, I don't see it in any of them, right? So I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to get us to tell them, why should you still go and do it? They obviously are missing something when they're saying they're not going to do it. What would Henry say to them to say, listen, this is why I think, in spite of your ideas, you should still go and vote?
What they need to do is do some more research. Number 1, they can go and select or collect a manifesto of the party, which sets out the party's platform for governance.
Right.
That's one thing they could do. And they could study that. Number 2, they could join a political party and make their influence count from within.
Right.
All right? It doesn't make any sense at all standing aloof and outside and making noise. You can effectively make changes from within.
Being inside. So would you
more lasting?
So do you?
And also, thirdly,
Yeah.
also, if they are Christians,
That's where
they are to be the salt of the earth
Yes.
and the lights in the world, and they are to be the influence for godliness
Right.
inside the party.
Right. So
And for those who, and particularly for those on the electoral selection committee.
hold on 1 second, Henry. I want to get in there.
Yeah.
There's a reason I want to get in here
Yeah.
now, because I want to hear, and I want the persons out there to hear your views on this. So you have no issue with Christians being involved in the political arena as is in the Bahamas?
With a couple of caveats. Number 1, the Christian's perspective is that we are sojourners here on earth, and our home is heaven.
Right.
So we are in transit. But while we are in transit, we are to be the salt of the earth
Right.
and the lights in the world, and we are to influence other people Godward.
Right. So
That's our mandate.
yes. Yes.
So you can effectively make some changes from within by joining and letting your light shine.
Right.
You remember, the church is the prophetic voice
Right.
to the politics and every area of life. And if Jesus Christ is your Lord,
Right.
then you will make it mandatory that you seek to influence others godly.
And let me get that out from you again now.
Yeah.
That they can join a political party and also present themselves for service.
Yes.
That's your way. Okay.
Yeah. But now they have to be careful too, because Caesar is not God. All right. So if you're working for Caesar and you are a Christian, God must have priority and preeminence in everything.
Okay.
So if God has called you to a specific ministry,
Right.
then that should be your obligation, primary obligation.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, as opportunity presents itself, then you should seek to influence
Right.
policy and to make changes where necessary for the betterment of the good of the majority.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, Henry. Lakera, here's where I want to go with the younger people now, because so the younger people they have this what I call conundrum now. So they're looking at the various parties and they're saying my views are not represented by any of them. Right? Now, are they going to be comfortable to stay out of the fray and just allow things to go on with a hope of something changing? Or, like Henry is saying, are they going to join the fray and actually get their ideas to the fore? And here's why I'm asking you that question, because in our country, the party that wins the election gets to set the agenda for legislation in the country.
Yeah.
And you need to get your views there, because then they're not going to make laws that you like. You see? So what are they thinking about? What are young people? Because I'm trying to get you to speak to them or to speak to this, that if the Christian particularly does not get to be in a place where you can vote a particular party in, where you can have laws that would reflect our kingdom, meaning the kingdom of God, then how are things going to change? You see that?
It's interesting that you said that, because I think the issue with a lot of young persons is they never thought that far. They don't realize that, the persons that you vote for are actually the persons who create law, who have the ability to amend law and repeal them, so do away with it. I think about the legislation that has to do with the prohibition of liquor stores being open on Sundays, or same-sex marriages. These laws didn't come out of thin air.
Right.
Someone had to create them, and so I think that the young person should think a bit deeper to say, don't just sit out of the election because you feel as though your voice won't be heard. It's so important that you have to be a part of the election in order to shape future laws, which will impact future generations.
Definitely. And young people, this is something, and parents, these are some things that we are going to have to intentionally become involved in our the next generation's life, so that we can get the right perspective on what we want our country to look like. But it seems to me staying away, Henry, which is what people normally do, they withdraw in times like this and feel as if, well, because I don't see any results, and watch this, now, then I'm going to stay out of the process.
Yeah, well, I think that's a grave mistake because fundamentally what you want is candidates who have a servant heart. Like Jesus' example was to his disciples who were fighting over positions. If you want to be great, you must first become servant of all. Servant of all. And they must maintain that servant attitude throughout their service. And not be arrogant in office. That's a big turn off.
Yeah.
And even that goes against Scripture.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the case I'm bringing before both of you. So what people I find are saying now in elections, they say, well, listen. Well, first of all, let's hit this one first, right? Let's hit this one first. When I go to a political organization, it's a Christian now. I go to a political organization. I go to some meetings, and the meetings, the atmosphere is not conducive for me being around there. Okay, the way people speak, how they do certain things, I just don't think a Christian could handle being around there. What it says, how do they deal with trying to infiltrate that rank when it seems as if being there, it almost contaminates them, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their spirit.
Well, that speaks to many things because it speaks to public morality, individual morality, particularly those who offer themselves for service in leadership positions. We need to be more selective and detailed in our examination of candidates for those who volunteer to serve other people. And we must seek out people who are qualified. There's a movement now afoot that there needs to be more females in frontline politics. Well, personally, I'm against quotas. And I believe the job should go to the best person, the best qualified and competent person. That's who merits selection. Not because you need females in place. I agree there should be some females, but these females who offer themselves must be highly qualified to outdo the males. And I don't know if we have too many of them want to offer for selection. And those who are highly qualified and can outdo the males, well, I say go for it.
Yes.
All right? And they can bring changes to the same condition.
Yes.
And those who are qualified, preeminently qualified, and highly motivated, and also have a servant spirit, they can bring about the needed changes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk also now. When you said you used the word, but then preeminently more qualified. Yeah. I trust that you are not trying to put the bar higher for the women. That ain't what you said.
No, the bar is equal for the males and the females.
Okay,
but not because you are a female means that you must get a position.
Yeah, I understand that. Now you do know, Brother Sears.
I say the same thing for the males.
Yes,
If the male is not qualified, suitably qualified, then he shouldn't get the position.
Yeah, let me tell you why.
Because there's been in the past a lot of lazy MPs.
Yeah.
Lazy.
But let me tell you why I said that, but it says is because I'm saying that within the context that the women, the females, in the past have been more qualified than the men to start with. They're doing better in school. They're doing better on their jobs. Whatever the case may be, they're actually doing better. That's why I thought it was strange you brought it up within that context. But they're doing better, you know.
But we don't have enough of them offering.
Women?
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's for a particular reason. We might talk about that another time, because maybe the politics have been male-dominated and are not opening up enough to the females. And so I think it's just been Sears,
Yeah.
it's been an all boys club for a long period of time, and I think
Yeah,
the females are working themselves in,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that's what I would say about them.
But they need to keep up the fight.
Yeah, I think they will. I
They
think
need
they
to
will.
keep it up.
So Lakera, back to you now. I'm trying to talk about how can a Christian now, young person, and this is the same question I asked, but it says, particularly, let's say you have these youth arms now of political organizations, and the Christian now who wants to participate and be salt, Henry, and be light, and to offer themselves to make a contribution in the political arena. My question is, how do you do that? And might that be a turn off for a young person because of the kinds of activities that are happening in there, when they have meetings or whatever the case might be? Is the atmosphere okay for Christians to be in and to be able to get their voices heard? Do you think so in these? I don't know if I don't think you might have been a part of any of them, but what has been have you heard concerning that? A Christian now.
I think it's okay for a young Christian to join the youth arms of these political parties. I've not been a part of it, but I have attended some meetings.
Okay.
And in those meetings, I think it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing that I would be concerned about. So you have meetings, and then you have social events. And so that may be where a young Christian may feel a particular way about, but for the most part, it's community outreach, and then there's formal meetings. And so for the young Christian, you take what's good, and then you leave the rest. I think it's similar to Christians being a part of any general organization. Some things will not be for you, and some things are what you can do without compromising your Christianity. And so I think you take those same principles in the political party as well.
Certainly. I'm one that believes pretty strongly, Henry, in the view of being salt and light. I think that for far too long, the prophetic voice, the Christian voice, has not been, had not been hearkened to in party politics. When we go back, Henry, before majority rule in our country, and as we saw those men who were on the front line of fighting for change in our country, which only could happen at the ballot box. Yeah. See, I'm trying to to get us to understand that where we are now is because the vote basically is sacred.
Yeah.
It's sacred. The Christian church did not back off from that movement for majority rule and for heading towards an independent country. The Christian was forefront in that movement. Those who were part of the movement, the H.W. Browns and the Ari Cooper seniors, you might have heard these names. But these men were the voice of God in those parties. They rallied their members to go and vote. Change happened. And here's what I'm going to say, because I think we've lost this in the last 47, going on 50 years now. Is that we took the change that happened in our country as the leader of a political organization who was the force behind the change. But I think what they missed was that the force behind the change was God, through the religious leaders, as those political leaders hearkened to the voice of the prophets at that time. You see? And I think what happened is, over the years, we have kind of handed over our the major power in this whole movement, and that is the God power behind the movement.
Yes.
Okay? And so, young people today, I believe, must necessarily be involved in the movement for what you want. But if you stay out of the fray, and when I say young people, I'm not just talking about young people. I am talking about young Christians now, because we do need the prophetic voice to be heard at the table with a meaningful contribution.
Yes.
And so these are some of the things, young people, we want you to keep in mind. Never mind all of the other stuff that's going on. You have to become involved in change in your country. Okay? Now, let's move on to party politics now. Party politics, because as we have known it in this country, there have been basically two major parties. Two major parties. Each one of them have their platform. I'm a Christian now. So what happens? How should we choose now who we vote for as a Christian for any of the 23 now parties? There's 23 of them.
Yeah.
So what Christians, who should a Christian vote for? Starting with you, Brother Sears. And how should they do that? How should you go about choosing who you vote for?
Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Meaning that as a Christian, you depend upon God, God's direction in making all decisions, every decision. So we need divine guidance, because there are some booby traps and some all kind of snares around the corner that we can't see, but God is aware of them, and he will whisper his truths into our ears, and he only whispers his truths to those who are close to him. So if you are a Christian, then God speaks to you. And then also Micah 6. What he has shown you what to do, O man, what is required of you, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Now that particular verse applies to those who are in office, as well as to those who are voters. That's the standard that we have to hold these people to. Not necessarily political party, but if they are in a political party, that's the standard that you use, because they are going to go into office as a servant, and they are going to be concerned about justice. They're going to have compassion for people, and they're going to acknowledge God. Okay? So that's a tall order, but it's doable.
So you are saying that when you're going to vote, you will pray to God to guide you.
You need guidance from God.
In which party to vote for.
Exactly. Now, not because you are a die-hard member of the party means that you must vote for them. You can be a die-hard, but then God's word has the final decision. It is God's word that you're going to abide by.
Okay.
Because there are some things that you got to demonstrate civil disobedience against.
No, I ain't reached that part yet now, because when you're talking about civil disobedience, now you're talking about the government that's in party. What I'm trying to get at now is, I'm trying to get Brother Henry as to who am I going to vote for? Right? So, and that's what I'm trying to get to find out from you. Like, because here's what I want to say. These political parties, they have what you call their platforms, right? So they have their ideology. Yeah. This is who we are, right? Now, so if this is who we are, you follow a certain ideology. Let's say, for instance, the Christian church within United States politics, they basically follow the evangelicals. They basically follow the Republican Party because that's the party they say is closer to godly principles than the next party. And it doesn't matter, Henry, what is on these persons' agenda. The people will vote for the party because of their ideology, even if they have some trap, like you say, in there.
But they are not all straight, you know. They're not all straight.
I believe you.
Because voting for the evangelicals, a lot of the evangelicals, they have a lot of baggages. Racial disharmony, Jim Crow, all of these evil things as attachments and baggages. And that's not right.
Right.
And that's not godly.
Right.
But they are Republicans and they are evangelicals.
Yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily make them right.
Yeah. So you'll say,
but you can disagree with the party.
Yeah.
You can disagree with some of the ideologies.
Yeah.
And also you have the option of choosing another party.
Right. So when you look at it now, so you have 23 parties that you are going to look at this time. I wouldn't say, I'm just saying 23 out there. And what you will do is you will pray about which one of them you will vote for. That's what you say.
No, I'll go a little further because sometimes you have to interview them for the job. And you have to raise some questions, put some pointed questions to them.
Okay.
Like family values.
Yeah.
If the candidate does not have a decent, upright family life, family structure, that's questionable. Because if the family can't trust that person,
right,
how should we in the community entrust him with wealth and also with the public purse? All right, and this is where cronyism comes in, and this is where corruption is brewed.
Right.
All right, because those who have low morality, lack of principles and guidance, they're not fit for office.
Right.
Technically.
Okay, good.
They're not fit for office.
Yes, I got you. Now let me tell you, because I want to get back.
But
to
also, you want to engage them in a conversation, the candidate.
Let me say this because I want to get there, and I probably want to post this one to Lakera. You see, Henry, you brought there your personal member of parliament for your particular constituency, right?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, everybody knows it ain't about them.
Yeah.
That, at the end of the day, it is the party who wins. So it's like you're not voting for a person so much as you're voting for a party or a prime minister. You see, that's the issue. Let's talk a little bit about how young people. I'll come back to it. But talk a little bit about how young people would see that. Do they, in terms of when they are looking for a party to vote for, are they voting for a platform or are they voting for a person at the top of that platform?
The latter. Because I've had conversations with my friends and other colleagues, and they're like, the MP running in my area is such a great guy or such a great woman, and I wish I could vote for him or her, but I don't want this leader in charge anymore.
Right.
And so I have to vote against them. And so people are, and I think this is just a general consensus, even youth and older persons, is not necessarily who the MP is in your constituency. Some of them don't even know them. They don't care to meet them. It's who is running for prime minister.
Right.
And do I want that person to lead me?
Right. See, that's what I'm saying, Henry, because what I'm saying here is you can have, this is under our Westminster system. You can have a great Christian person running in your area. And that Christian person now might not necessarily be of your party affiliation, but you could say, well, I want to vote for that person because they are a Christian, right? But the fact of the matter is, even though he is a Christian who is running in your area, number one, he is not one that is going to be driving the party's agenda. should they win. You see what I'm saying? So, should Christians be voting for their personal members of parliament, or should they be voting for the party who will run the agenda?
Well, under the Westminster system, it is the party.
Yes.
It's all about the party.
Yes.
But unfortunately, you have people there who wouldn't even bug the system to stand up for the constituency which they represent. All right, so that's a problem too.
So,
for those who put themselves out there to be elected.
right.
Now, if they are not elected during the election, there are other places the party can place them. Because, for instance, the Senate is not an elected office. They are appointed. Okay, so he can be appointed to the Senate. But also, there are other rooms in government that they can take up, boards, chairmen of the boards, and all of those other things.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, the party and the party's whip are very powerful.
Yeah. So all of these people are looking to serve at the pleasure of one man. You see what I'm saying? Now, so here's my question then now. What principles then ought to shape the Christians about who they are going to vote for? Should they be looking at the principles, and this for both of you, the principles of the leader of the organization more so than the others? That's first for you, Lakera, and then I'll go to you, Henry.
I think it should be the leaders, the leader of the respective party, because as you say, that's the person who is driving the horse. That is the face of the party. That is the person who has the most say, the all-powerful. And so we should be looking at the character of the leader and who that person is and whether they are fit to lead the country.
And so that's then listen, that is the reason, therefore, I guess, that we would want to hear as much of the worldview of that person,
Right.
as much as possible. And in our country, we don't, and we hear these things. We just see people on the rally field.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what Christians need to. As a matter of fact, we have a voice in this country. We need to be able to try to shape where we are going. What should Christians try to hold these leaders to, so we can know who they are?
Yeah, well, they got to be people of integrity, number one. And you only find this out when you engage them in conversations. Sometimes they're shrewd and they can camouflage it. But they need to have thick skin, and they must be articulate. They must be industrious, and they must also have a track record of accomplishments, worthy accomplishments. They must be hard workers, diligent, and we call servant leaders.
Yeah.
And you got to engage them sometimes from within the party in order to get to them.
Okay, so what do you think?
You can't just do it from the outside.
No, but here's what I. That's why, and as I say, that's what I believe that we ought to be doing is, as a people, we are never going to know of their worldview, of their philosophy, of who they are, without being able to stand what I call the test of the fire of questioning.
Yes.
Where we come to where there ought to be debates. We should not have leaders who cannot tell you exactly who they are and answer these questions. Isn't that what the young people want to hear, Lakera?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they're trying to cover up something, and they don't want to be accountable.
Yeah.
But leaders must be accountable to the people that elect them.
Yeah.
They must demonstrate accountability.
So you would say in the future we ought to have these debates where we hear what their views are on on a broad range of issues, so we can get them on record as to saying, this is what I believe.
We could do that, and we could also have a forum where people put questions to the leader
Yes.
in public and let him stand or fall on his answers, on his responses.
Yes, yes.
But I mean, you got to be able to speak truth to power. And that's, I think, we are lacking in that regard.
The reason
we aren't too much
you're lacking
for
at,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that I wanted to bring up. We touched a little bit on it. I want to say a little bit more on it because we're getting really into to the end of the program. In that, the reason that we want to really know what leaders or prospective leaders, what their thought process is, because when they make legislation, they bind the people to whatever laws they are making out there. So let's say, for instance, if there are so many laws that the government signs onto in conventions, they're done, and we don't know what it is that they are doing.
Right.
But we handed that over to them to do, and the only way we're going to know if they are going to sign these conventions, sign onto these laws, based on what they have told us that their philosophy are that we can trust. You see
But
what I'm saying?
furthermore, there need to be accountability. When these people go over foreign fields and they sign conventions and other documents on behalf of the Bahamas, there must be in the system whereby when they return, they make a report to the people of the Bahamas. You have government information service and all of those things. Rather than being a propaganda machine, they can be an information or educational channel.
Yes.
Whereby the Bahamian people are kept up to date and know what's going on.
Yeah.
So they can aptly respond.
Right. Well,
And we can also disagree after they would have even signed on the dotted line.
Yeah.
Because they signed on the dotted line against our principles and our policies.
Yeah. What do you think, Lakera, that young people would want to see exemplified from our leaders that would help them, I would say, to have some hope in the future of their country based on their participation? What are some of the things that young people want? If they could say, listen, Prime Minister, if there's a law that we want you to make for us to have hope in the future, what are some of the things that young people are saying?
So young people now more than ever are interested in entrepreneurship. I think in years past, the political agendas have been jobs, and creation of jobs. But the young persons are no longer interested in that. They want to be able to fish for themselves and be able to provide their own way of living. A number of other persons are interested in the arts and culture. Not everybody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer. There are so many other industries that young people are interested in, or they're going off to school to study. And because these particular industries, or they're not jobs here, they stay abroad after they're finished college. And so those are the things that the young people are interested in, that they want to see happen in their country.
Okay, and what we are saying is that young people, if you have an agenda, and I want to say this to parents, these are the things that you see, that you are going to have to find a platform. You have so many, opportunities to be able to sell your ideas. But you are going to have to get together, use the power of the media to get your point or points of view across, that this is what you want. And the empowerment or the coming together of young people in voting is what can make that happen. That you have to be a part of the process. That's young people in general.
Yeah.
Christian young people, you need to be to the table to bring a Christian, a prophetic voice, as what it says, called it, to the table, so that those things and those ideas that come forth, that they are salted, okay, that they have, or they are mixed with godly principles in order to make our country better. These are things that must necessarily have to happen in order for you to get the kind of, what should I say, the platforms that you want to see that Lakera just talked about.
Yeah.
But it says me basically to the end, this goes by very quickly.
Too quick. Yes, indeed.
This goes by very quickly. So
I just wonder, I want to stress one more point.
yeah.
That is civil disobedience.
Okay. Yes, you want to talk about it. Yes, let's get it.
I started earlier.
Yes.
But civil disobedience is allowed for in the Word of God. If you go back to Exodus chapters 1 and 2, Pharaoh made a law to kill all of the male babies.
Right.
He gave the order to the midwives,
Yes.
but they refused to slay the newborn males.
Boys, yeah.
Okay. Then, of course, you have in Daniel chapter 3, I think it is, where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down to the golden image that was created by the rulers. And that was law, that they bow down and worship.
Right.
They refused. And, of course, they were thrown into the fiery furnace, but they were rescued divinely. Daniel himself also, because of his integrity, his cohorts, fellow lawmakers, schemed against him and caused a law to be written that no one should pray to a god or anyone outside of the ruler.
Yeah.
All right, if not, they'd be thrown into the lion's den. But Daniel, he civilly disobeyed.
Right.
He was thrown in, but was rescued divinely. And of course, all of those instances of civil disobedience, they were not the cause of anarchy or insurrection. It was simply a matter of disobeying a man-made law in favor of God's laws and standards. And finally, with Peter and John in Acts chapter 5, where they were beaten by the authorities, whipped, and commanded not to teach and preach in the name of Jesus. They said, we are not careful to answer you on this, but we ought to obey God rather than man. So the civil disobedience has to do with a Christian standing up for right and righteousness and God's laws, and not causing anarchy or insurrection. You're civilly disobeying in favor of pleasing God.
Yeah, we ought to do that. Yes. We basically at the end. So Lakera, I have to give you your final word. What would you say to the young people out there as to their a moral obligation to their country to vote in the upcoming election?
So what I would say is, I feel when Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God, obviously in that context, he was speaking about taxes. But more generally, I feel like that was a call for Christians to do all that is necessary as good citizens of their country to support the government. And by supporting the government, that means we are to pray for our leaders, we are to obey laws, we are to pay our taxes, but it also means that we are supposed to vote. And like the pastor has said, so much has happened to afford us the ability to vote, especially for women. with the women's suffrage movement. I would dare to say, you know, it's a slap in the face when these women have fought so hard for us to be able to vote and be a part, to run in elections and be a part of a government. And so I think we should think a bit deeper, think about the consequences of not voting in this next upcoming election.
Thank you very much. And I would say, brothers and sisters, Brother Henry brought up a scripture that he talked about in Jeremiah, as God would have, through Cyrus, would allow his people to go back to Jerusalem, but he did not allow all of them to go. He said to some of them to stay and to build and to seek the good of the land that they were presently in.
Yeah.
You know, work hard and build it. Okay? So God is calling all of us, particularly Christians, to seek the good of the land.
Yes.
And you can't seek the good without intentionally participating in the process of voting, getting in there and doing your part, and to live out your Christianity in front of the world. That is how God is calling us to change our generation. And young people, particularly, you are the future. And we are looking for you to get your platform going. You have so many things that you do with these gadgets to pull people together, to network. Some of you got so many friends on this. This is how you make a difference. And I'm just talking about young people. I'm talking about young Christian people as well.
Yeah.
Be the salt of the earth that God has called you to be. Mr. Henry says, good to have you here with us. I said the time went very quickly. Lakera, good to have you with us here on Salem Speaks. And good night. Our time is gone. We'll join you next week with another insightful topic. See you next week. God bless you.